Welcome to Pod Places. I am back with Phil Ike and Ryan.
Hey guys.
Going?
You didn't even get a last name out of that, Ryan.
I'm just Ryan. It's like Madonna, Cher, Ryan.
That seems like
Ryan.
a name that would be tough to pull off.
I'm trying.
Frank.
Every day I'm trying to do it.
Just hustling.
Except 90% of the time it's Brian. They call me Brian, so it's not working.
You get a real uphill battle now with this whole thing. It's the whole Ryan Adams, Brian Adams thing that I struggled with a lot in my 20s. Like, oh, I got really into Ryan Adams music. People are like, really? the soundtrack to Robin Hood? Like, never mind. Forget it.
That's great.
How you two been?
Been good. Kids are virtual schooling, so that's going on. But
How is that experience going for you, Ryan?
it's actually been good. We went in with very low expectations, but it's been good. The kids have been, they've got their little schedule. They get back in their Zoom rooms and do their thing, and their teachers have been good. So yeah, it's worked for us. I get that there's a lot of people it wouldn't work for, but it's definitely worked for us.
Jeff, are your kids doing virtual school?
They are. So it is.
How's that going?
Not bad. I mean, it's funny. They're like, oh, I'm stuck staring at a screen all day long. It's like, shut up. That's what you do every day anyway. Like, that is your favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Yeah, it's just not Pokemon or a YouTube video of somebody crushing a stuffed animal in their car, or opening a toy box.
Like, you guys have trained your whole life for this. But it's a lot more organized in spring, and it's going pretty well. Unfortunately, everybody's in sports. Like, we are able to do sports, so at least everybody has an outlet, and they can leave the house and do some sort of activity. So that's keeping the sanity. But,
my brother's jiu-jitsu coach was talking once about the need to really start talking about the mental health consequences of people not interacting and not being active and not being outside and in social situations. It was really interesting conversations, because for a lot of people, jiu-jitsu in that class, they go because this is their outlet, and they're not competitors or want to win championships, but it's their 2 hours where they just get to release some tension and energy and do something other than work. And
we've just been
consequences.
We've just been kicking the dog a lot more. Like, it's like he's really suffering through all that. So jiu-jitsu,
open up the economy.
Yeah, sorry, Leon. Jiu-jitsu's been canceled. You're gonna have to fight me again. So Phil, you were solo last week. How did things go?
I was. It was pretty awesome. Katie Yellow and Megan Haza down in Flint, they're doing some pretty incredible work. Very, very citizen focused placemaking work. Very kind of grassrootsy. I mean, Katie Yellow is the official director of placemaking for the What's Up Downtown project in Flint, but it's a very organic approach to it. It doesn't come across as contrived at all, and they're doing some pretty creative stuff down there. I drove down there for just about an hour to walk around and check things out last week, but hopefully I'll be able to get a chance to drive down there and spend a little bit more time.
Yeah, I had a chance to listen to it and really enjoyed it. You managed to carry things in our absence.
There was a lot of pressure there.
I bet. No, it was good, and I like those two are great together, and how much they cared for each other's work. But the Porch Project is just fantastic. Like, very, very inspirational, and obviously, I get a lot of the feels in what she's saying, because those little connections mean everything, and so it was.
Yeah, what's really cool to see is like, obviously we have a lot of different voices in Proud Places, but themes are definitely coming out in interviews and workshops in the downtown happy hour, where these really thematic ideas are coming around from all these different places. So that we're kind of onto something, talking about the importance of the neighborhood, because we like to be obsessively focused on downtowns. Like, well, how important is the neighborhood as well? The importance of considering rural communities as well as urban communities, and should we even use terminology like that, and is that helpful or harmful? I mean, it's really great to see some of these other really important conversations in place bubbling to the surface with all of these different people.
Agreed, and I've noticed that people really like are excited to have a chance to talk about their work in a different way instead of always,
Mm-hmm.
like what's the economic impact and so on. Like, actually, what's the human impact, and how
Right.
does it make you feel? Which are the real questions? And yeah, it's nice to get have a chance for. I've enjoyed seeing how people respond to that and how excited they get. So today we've kind of been bouncing around some guests and this or that, but going back this week to review some of the our best contributor pieces this week, and we had some good stuff go out recently. So
Yeah.
first we're going to talk about Joe Borgstrom's piece on a killing community character. Next, Ryan put out something about Brandon community or made in brands. And then finally, we're going to talk about Jen Acosta's piece on the always kind of seeking outside investment, always looking for outsiders. Why we can't ever look inward to fix our community problems. But jumping in, Joe's piece really struck a nerve with me. I love Joe's so great because he comes to this from a career of economic development and like government, and usually you never see those people reform. They always speak in like economic development robot talk.
Mm-hmm.
And to have somebody that was deep on the inside come out of that and can say like, man, most of this is bullshit, most of this is terrible, and really what we were doing by pushing this jobs agenda was killing the thing that made communities special. Economic development at some point switched over to how do we build local wealth, to how do we transfer more local wealth to national chains. And it's very much the cost of community. So he really laid that out well, and how this equation is kind of been turned on its head and really backfired for most communities, yet it's still so prevalent. This jobs narrative, if you're not doing ED narrative, is needs to change, and change quickly, but it's still pretty prominent. And so I loved how he laid that all out.
Yeah. And, one of the things I love about Joe's writings, and Phil, it kind of goes to your point about the different themes surfacing, the recurring threads through a lot of the topics we talk about. Because, Joe's articles, I try to never miss Joe's because his are always really great, and they're always pretty deep and kind of come from that economic background. But he's talking about something different every time. But you definitely see there's these recurring themes of like, a lot of the things he outlined of, with the chains and the big box stores and the strip malls. Like, the good news is when there's themes like that, we should be able to tackle them. We should be able to dive in and start solving some of these things instead of, because they are definable. We can define very key themes, and he does a really good job of pointing out a lot of those and what we can actually do to start addressing some of those.
And it goes to your point too, Ryan, that you frequently make in our podcasts, in that a lot of times people they think that their cities are unique, and that they're facing problems that no other city on the face of the planet is facing. But like Joe's piece really highlights, almost every community is facing one of these things, if not all of these things, whether it's an influx of strip malls or it's a propensity to demolish their history. Like these are themes that everybody is addressing in some capacity. And so the great thing about people having similar problems is that you get a lot of brains on the problems and how to fix it. And that's another thing in Joe's piece, is that not only is he identifying problems, but he's also saying, this is how you go and you fix these problems as well.
Yeah. It just dawned on me that as you were saying some of that, all three of our topics today are totally connected, and I didn't think about it before, but they are all this very outwardly focused versus inwardly focused, and how you build local wealth, how you build local pride. And it's funny that that's what all three topics came back to, is like, this is one way, and when we always look outside, we're really just handing over fistfuls of cash to say, hey, we can't fix this ourselves. So one of the lines that I really loved that Joe had put in there was, it was basically like, they've gotten so good. People have gotten so good in big business and economic development about kind of being bullies. It's like, well, we'd actually like to, how's that going to benefit our community? Like, what, you're anti-business? You're some sort of goddamn socialist? Like, oh, well, no. I just can see where Walmart might hurt our local economy. And like that argument has been so successful, and they have beaten down so many potential push backs by just trotting those same things out all the time. And it's such nonsense. To advocate for community, to advocate for your local economy, and to advocate for keeping wealth in your community has nothing to do with your stance on capitalism, yet that has become such a familiar trope, and it's so tired.
Yeah, his last paragraph, I pulled it up. He said, "To be clear, this is not a post about being against growth, but rather to encourage management of growth in such a way that it helps a community keep its character without being overrun by sameness." And so, yeah, like if you really value your community, you're going to take steps and you're going to think ways in order to protect what you have, because it's taken a long time to cultivate those things, and all those assets have organically grown over time. And it's really easy for somebody to come in and just destroy all that in a heartbeat. And so it's not anti-growth. It's just saying, well, how can we steer growth in a way where everybody wins, as opposed to losing part of our community, losing part of our character.
Right. It's not anti-growth at all. It's growth in a way that benefits the community, and growth in a way that enriches locals and doesn't enrich people that don't need any more enrichment. So
Yeah.
the way I think is helpful for me to lay it out, it's like, I always think of my grandpa's town. And let's say that when he was my age, there was probably a shoe repair shop, and a couple of downtown grocers, and some leather workers, and a bakery, and 100 different stores in that downtown that were all locally owned, that probably were filled with incredible craftsmen, like people with awesome skills that were that were just a pleasure to go in and see how good they were, and a tailor and all those things. Well, every new, Payless shoe source, every new Walmart, every new Target, every new Home Depot means a bunch of those are going out. And so you're trading in a local job that somebody where they have the skill set, and they're also adding to the local vibrancy, while simultaneously keeping a bunch of money in the economy. And you're just selling them out. You're completely selling them down the river and replacing with something that sucks. So now when we think about going to community, it's like, man, I really want to go to a town where they have a baker and a butcher and that cool little handmade shoe shop or whatever. Nobody's ever traveling anywhere because they're big box stores. So it's right. I mean, Joe's point is you're not only just killing your character, you are really not growing, and you're decimating your economy.
Well, and the other thing that I think is really transparent, especially a lot of the cities like in Texas where I'm from, they've only set it up for one kind of growth. There's only one kind of growth that will work in the way that they've done the land use. And so there's several communities that, the city is entirely funded by sales tax. And so because of that, they are it's basically on this four corners approach. Everywhere that there is two major roads that intersect, they just build big four corner strip centers at all four. So it's like you have residential, big four corner strip center. And they did that in the 70s, 80s, and because they want retail sales tax throughout their entire city, distributed through their entire city. The problem is when those start to fail, they're not adaptable for other uses. Like it only works for that. And so then you just have these big, ugly, vacant things. And a big strip center doesn't allow for like a craftsman to come in next to the Walmart. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. And so you have to have land use patterns that allow for that, because even if you want it, if all your options are just every mile we have this big four corners development, there's nowhere to go.
Right. We've just adapted our local economies to one type of business. You're right. And it's like, it's capitalism doesn't doesn't necessarily mean what I think people think it means. Um, and there's no, it's not just this endless growth. I mean, we had the conversation a few months ago or weeks ago about, growth for the sake of growth. Like, that's not what it means. And, the more you cater to these national chains, the worse your economy is going to be. The only way they exist is by taking your local resources. Like, you're just a pipeline to foster money leaving your town to go to their town, and then I mean, that's one piece, but the other piece is gets that community killer. Like, well, if you're going to let them in, at least make them play by your rules. When you bend over to them, or when you say like, oh yeah, we'll build whatever you want, we don't care. That's even crazier. To let them come in and destroy the nature of your community because they want to pull money out is asinine.
And you can always see this in action to Frankenmuth, Michigan is about 45 minutes away from me here in Bay City. And their theme is a little Bavaria. So like every shop, it looks like a Bavarian house. And I mean, that's their shtick. And you look at the chains there, like the McDonald's, it looks like a Bavarian inn. And so there's evidence there that that the national chains will be willing to play by your rules if your city is worth it to them, if it has vibrancy and people and density and like all these things that would benefit them. They are willing to play by your rules if you have those standards in place. And then you go to most other cities, and like the McDonald's looks like a McDonald's, looks like a McDonald's, look like a McDonald's. So it's just a matter of having those standards in place, and then also the willingness to hold to those standards when somebody comes in and says, hey, we want to build a blank and here's our blueprint. You take their blueprint away and say, well, here's our blueprint. Mm-hmm. And you just have to be willing to stand firm in those standards.
Yeah. And that works when you have options and when you have choice, mm-hmm. because a lack of choice makes it hard to say no to them, because right. when you design your city where the only thing that can fit here and can thrive here is a Walmart, you're going to do whatever it takes to get that Walmart and keep that Walmart.
True.
But to Jeff, to your point about capital, like free market capitalism, when that's working well, that means that when one business fails, there's 5 others that are ready to go into that spot, do something different, and it's going to be survival of the fittest. But we've created a rigged game where only one format can work, and it either works in that space and they suck money out of your community, or it fails and now it's just an empty parking lot.
Imagine if economic development people approached local businesses like they did national chains. Like, oh, by the way, we renovated this downtown building. We've run all the utilities to it, and we're going to give you a $10 million tax break if you open up your bakery in it. Like, that would probably be successful. But the idea of doing that, it's so funny. Local people would lose their minds because they'd be like, that's socialism. Why are you giving people money? It's only okay if it's a national chain. But like, you could take any economic development budget, slash it in a quarter, and fill up every empty building in town by taking that same approach, but it's never done.
Yeah, you'd make such a huge difference in the lives of those small businesses. In his piece, he identifies character killers as strip malls, car-focused design, demolishing history, national chains, mega block projects. So I'm interested to see what you would add to his list of community character killers.
To me, it's just anything that's homogeneic, anything that does not ring to the community's identity, anything that's not attached to, like, there's nothing personable about a huge global chains, little satellite office in your town. And that it's not meant to be. It's meant to be as cheap as possible. It's meant to be as uniform as possible. And that takes away what is interesting, because what we look for is quality materials. We look for something compelling. We look for beauty, and those are all the antithesis of that. So just, anything a chain does is typically just going to be drab.
Yeah. And I love that he included the mega block project, because that covers so many things. Because without that, you could come in and technically check a lot of the boxes. You could say, we're going to do a live, work, play area. It's going to be walkable. We're going to string lights. It's going to look good. We'll have a mural. Like, you could check all the placemaking boxes. But if it is a master mega plan thing, it's not adaptable. Like, all those owners, it's going to be all built at once. All those owners are going to be large corporate chains. They're not going to be the baker who owns the building and owns the space. And so because of that, the people that work in those buildings are going to be hourly employees who just work for Sephora and all these, whatever brand opens a shop there.
Yeah.
You just can't build anything interesting at that scale. It's never been done, and it never will be done. And it's also going to, I don't always agree with everybody on some gentrification arguments, but that's gentrification embodied when somebody from outside comes in, drops in a, $50 million site all at once, and it all looks the same, and it all serves the same, and it all is basically used to the same end, instead of where every city was built one business at a time, one building at a time, one house at a time. And that's where you have local ownership. That's where, if things improve, everybody benefits. That's where you're going to have local business. It's at a scale. Like, you just can't build 10 acres at a time and expect it to work. Like, everybody wants everything done all at once, and that's not how it's done.
And that goes to his point too about historical preservation. Is like, a lot of these buildings you can't build again. Like, you could build an exact replica, but it's going to cost 30 times what it cost when it was originally built. And so you really have to weigh, do we destroy this building that we can never get back? And for more reasons other than just history is nice. There's also a fiscal element there too, where, like, you're not ever going to be able to build a building like that, or afford to be able to build a building like that.
Yeah. And I think the reason it keeps happening, though, is because a lot of those projects do work short term, meaning sometimes a decade, sometimes 2 decades. But the problem is, you could have something where there's nothing, and the city and the residents and the tax base feels the impact of, man, all of a sudden it's going to be new stuff. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. We're going to have all these shops that we wanted. It's all going to be successful at the same time. But what that means is it's also all going to fail at the same time. So it might be awesome for 10 years, 20 years, but then it's going to all fail. And that's why the shopping centers, the strip centers, they were awesome when they first went in. They were all full. We went to them, and then they all failed at the same time. And so now we just have empty ones. And that's the thing with you need to have businesses. I mean, Jaime said it when he was talking about small, the idea of small, on a couple podcasts ago. It's because you allow individual businesses to start a business, own the building, and then succeed or fail. And when they fail, a new one comes in, and
right.
Everything is at a constant state of change. And that's when it's healthiest.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's a real neighborhood, a real city is offices and businesses and residents all mixed together in the same place. And that's why it works. And that's why it's sustainable, because if it's not all sort of dependent on one industry, like I don't know, I've seen some neighborhoods where it all becomes restaurants. It's like, that's fun for a while, but when one goes down, they're all going to go down, and there's no other uses in there. Like, it's just too much of trying to do everything at once. And economic development has just blinded so many city leaders to this way of thinking. When it bankrupts their budget, it makes their community less lovable. Nobody cares about, like, I don't know. I always come back to our name, Proud Places. Nobody's ever been proud of a Target or a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Payless. Like, it's just not representative of your community. So no one cares. No one cares about working there. No one's proud of shopping there. It's just a thing. And we can do so much better. And if everybody's proud of their local hardware store, everybody's super proud of their local bakery, yet we don't invest anything in that. And it's such a mistake.
Amen.
So yeah. Real angry now.
You're really angry heading into Ryan's article.
Oh, I'm gonna rip this made in
Yeah, who's this joker?
Crap. Yeah. We need that.
Um,
We need a controversial topic where one of you guys is like, that was garbage. What are you writing?
Disagree. Lowe's is awesome. All right. Well, so yeah, let's say that one wanted to foster more local shopping. Somebody wanted to lift up things that were made in town. Ryan, any ideas what one might do if you knew people that worked in branding?
Hmm.
Hmm.
What would we do? Yeah, no, I mean, we've done the idea of these made in brands, and everybody probably knows what that is. I mean, there's the obvious made in the USA, right? We all want to buy made in the USA, but yeah, I mean, we've over the last couple of years have really made an effort. So when we do a citywide branding effort, we're creating this comprehensive brand platform, and part of that is a made in brand for that community. And when we talk about like local ownership and buying local, no one's against that. Everyone supports that. The problem is they support it, they say they support it, and then they go order off of Amazon. And so for me, the biggest thing is you make it easy for people. Like if there's products sitting on the shelf at a local store and this one says, made in Salida, I'm going to order it because I'm in Salida. And if I'm visiting Salida, I want to buy a thing that's made right here. And it just makes it easy for people to connect and support that. And so, we've had a lot of success with helping communities roll out a made in brand program like that.
Michael, where do they typically come to you saying we need this, or are you already working with community and say like, hey, what you guys need is this?
Yeah, we're usually recommending it as part of like a larger initiative. So typically cities will come to us of, hey, we're trying to retain local talent or recruit local talent. We're trying to do economic development. And so we see them struggling to try to do those things. And we see this as, you're not asking for this directly, but this is part of the problem is, your businesses that you have here that are designing things, hiring people, building local products, let's give them a way to buy into the brand and feel that sense of pride. And let's help people patronize them by making it really clear that this is a local. And in this day and age, it's not always a product, right? And sometimes, so we've done like we just did one in Wapaka, Wisconsin. So there's this whole series of badges where it's Wapaka grown, Wapaka design, Wapaka employer. And so it's not always about even just making a product. It's just that this is a locally owned business that is doing something here, and it just makes it easier for them to focus efforts on that and to give that business tools to go market themselves.
It really is such a good parallel to the last conversation because, as I wrapped up that one, I was ranting about how no one cares about these things from out of town, and there's something inherently that people do care about when it is of your town. And it's a funny thing, like, I don't know, that's a funny way that pride works. Even though I might not have grown that or I might not have made it, it still comes from my people. These are my people. Like, we share a climate, we share a landscape, we share some common ancestry or whatever. Like, these are my people, and my people made this thing. And that's a pretty cool experience, and that is how pride works. And I think that probably does make people proud when they can pick up something to shop with that little label on it, because it's like, yeah, man, that was us.
And it really plays to humans' natural tendency to want to band together in groups. Whether you call it a tribe or a crew or however you describe it, like we want to get together with people who are like us. I mean, you look at Facebook and the groups on Facebook. I mean, you can find interests of anything in the world. Just the 7 other people in the world that are into the same things you are. And now you feel a great bond with them because you're gathering around this idea. And so the power of this made in brand is really kind of almost reclaiming some of that visual aspect of, hey, this is us. We are Two Rivers, Wisconsin. And it's the banner that everybody walks under, or that they see when they drink their coffee, and they see it on the cup. And it's just a little signal that says, I am here with my people. This is my group. This is my tribe, however you want to describe it.
Yeah. And look how we are in this country about sports. Like, none of us are playing these professional sports or college sports, but we've got the hats and the shirt, and like, we're so proud,
Right.
and tailgating. And, I mean, people, they love it. They want to feel a connection, and they want to support things, and people want it to be that hyper local, like as the craft beer scene, started to explode. Like, if you're in Colorado on vacation, you don't just want a Colorado beer. You want a beer from like right there where you are, like
Right.
hyper local. And I think it doesn't, the thing that too is it doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. Like, there are some really great statewide, like New Mexico True, and there's some really good statewide made in brands. But what we've helped is really small towns, like you mentioned, Two Rivers, Wisconsin, really small towns launch these programs, and in a very phased approach, where like day one, it's literally just a badge and a sticker that you can go on a website and say, hey, I'm this company, this is what I do, and you get it. It's free. We just want you to put this on your window or on your products. And as it evolves and gets equity and starts built, then you can have it be a licensing program. People can pay. There can be more scrutiny about whether they really are made there. And you can grow it and evolve it to where the cities that are doing that right, those programs fund a lot of like community initiatives. They drive a lot of income either directly back to the local businesses, or just youth sports and community stuff, that just other things that people want to support for the community.
And it's such a good way to foster that pride. Like, people do need things to be proud of in their community. And if you aren't highlighting, hey, here are the great things that we do locally, here are what our people put out, they're going to lose that. They're going to miss out on that. And I think a lot about the sports analogy you bring up. And I kind of came to the conclusion a few years ago that the greater the sports pride, the lower the civic pride. Like, there seems to be a really weird relationship there, unfortunately. But what it taught me is, like, that's not a bad thing. It just means that people are desperate to place their pride in something. Like, if you are not proud of your town, if you don't feel good about it, that means you've got all this pent up pride that you can't express. And you're like, well, you're going to put it in on Friday. Friday nights is where you're going to invest that, and you're going to care too much, and you're going to get too wrapped up in it to an unhealthy degree. But I found there was definitely a relationship with those communities that obsessed about high school sports didn't have a whole lot of other things that they were proud of, and that was kind of a sad situation at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. When we started Civic Brand, our logo has this little like patch, like little badge symbol logo with the city inside of it. The reason we chose that patch or badge is because of the English Premier League soccer teams. A lot of their logos are like a badge or a patch like that. And we saw, just exactly like you were saying, I mean, spread all across England, these people that, they would like fight people about their soccer team because they were so passionate. But a lot of them were very poor, and like, they can't even afford to go to the games, but they are desperately looking for something to be proud of and say, this is me, and represent, and I will fight you if you have on the wrong colors. And we loved that. We wanted to harness and capture that, but make it about people's towns. And so you're right on. Like, that's why our logo looks like that. And I think that's something that's just naturally true. Like, we want to belong to something. We want to be proud of where we're from. So let's make it easier for people to be proud of that. Let's give them a shirt to wear. Like,
right.
Especially the timing of this is so good, because one of the good things I think coming out of COVID-19 is people really reaching back into their community and saying, how can we support this city that I call home? You saw kind of a collective push for supporting local restaurants because they had to go to takeout only, and local businesses. And now is really a time to seize that and carry that through into, post-COVID era and into the next decades. And because there is that momentum, and you can harness that by saying, hey, here's a made in, fill in the blank city. Everybody start using this, and just keeping it really casual so that you can keep that momentum going and then build it as you go.
That's a fascinating point. Not yours, Phil, but Ryan's.
Figured, well, you dropped a fascinating word and I knew you weren't talking about me.
No, that's a interesting. I mean, just about the soccer teams, like, right, like you know, hey, our community is it might be in terrible shape and we've got no jobs and everything's run down, but damn it, our team's gonna win. I'm like, yeah, that like you have to have something to fall back on that makes you feel good, and if that's it, like that's something we have to fix, you know, because if you think about where I always remember when I went to school down in Richmond, and the baseball team, the minor league baseball team, was kind of saying, we need a new stadium, we're out of here. And a good friend from Canada was like, we would tell them to piss off. Like, we have great cities, and sports don't define us. We're just not going to get jacked around by a sports ball team. And you know, cities that have a lot of civic pride already, cities where there's a lot to do, where there's great institutions, I don't think have that same sort of religious fervor towards their sports teams. There's just so much else to do, and their identity is not defined by, you know, a game that takes place, you know, 10 times a year.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, Phil, your point was also fascinating.
Why, thank you, Ryan.
What I wanted to comment about, to me was a little disappointing though, that because we work with a lot of cities, and we saw them in COVID-19 as a response to that. They're like, yeah, we're going to shift a lot of focus to supporting our local businesses because they need that right now. And
like it's a temporary thing.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. But why are we not always doing that? Why have we not been doing that? You know, like now we're going to like try to help them like survive and do all this extra stuff. And I've been super impressed. I mean, the cities have done, the ones that we've worked with, they've done an amazing job of like turning inward, you know, helping support that up. But it's just like, why can't we got to keep doing that going forward? Hopefully this sticks around and isn't just a back to business as usual.
Right.
Yeah, it just seems like the best marketing a city can possibly do is supporting their local businesses.
Yes. Yes.
And like their local nonprofits and their local volunteers and everybody just doing kick-ass stuff, because that's a group or a tribe of people that other people want to be part of. It's like, hey, I want to go over to this city because they're kicking ass over there. Like, people are poor and they're struggling with this XYZ, but man, they are doing a lot of stuff. Like, people love being from blank. And so I want to get in on that. I want a home that I can also feel proud of. And I mean, we talk about buzzwords and placemaking all the time, and people drop resiliency and then walk away from it and say, well, all our cities need resiliency. Well, what exactly does that mean? And if you talk about civic pride, there's not a more powerful tool for resiliency, to create resiliency, than civic pride, because that's the thing that gets you through something when you have nothing. Like when you're a city of 2,000 people and you just got wiped out by a flood, everyone's lives are completely destroyed. Like, you have absolutely nothing. You don't have economic development strategies or blueprints or plans or anything like that. All you have left is pride. And that's the thing that's going to scoop up a community and say, hell yeah, let's do this thing, but better. And then let's rebuild. Like, that's the base foundation of resiliency.
Couldn't agree more, Phil. So,
was that fascinating enough for you?
I don't know if it was. It is exactly right. Like, you hit the nail on the head. And I think sometimes we even gloss over the word pride. I mean, it's in the name for very intentional purposes. Like, it's the most important thing that you can do in your town, in your place, is to foster pride. It is all of those things. It means that you love your town. It means you're engaged. It means you have a good relationship. It means that you'll fight for it. It means that you will, in times of crisis, that you'll, you know, do everything you can. Like, pride is the one thing that if you could encourage or foster, create one thing in your community, it would be pride, because it is all those other things embodied. And I think it's the simplest way to put a proud community is going to be a healthy community in every way, and a community that is not proud of itself has every problem.
Yeah, and we talked about earlier with the first piece, you know, adaptability, and I think that's the hard thing that cities have to embrace a certain level of chaos, and they have to be okay with a certain level of turnover, because that's what makes a resilient place, is that it's adaptable. And I think that's why cities tend to favor the big master plan developments versus embracing the small, because I think they see like, hey, we're investing in all these small businesses, but then this restaurant goes away and this business goes away. And they have to embrace that and realize that that's okay, that as long as other ones can come in and it can kind of adapt and change. I mean, I think we've shared it. I don't know who created it, but we've shared the meme or graphic where it's like the rainforest versus like row crops. And like,
Yeah.
you know, the row crops will all fail at once, but the rainforest, there's so many species that are all coming and going that it's always strong. You know, it's not going to just die off if it's cold one year. And so, but I do think that's hard for cities to embrace that level of chaos. They want the big, clean, all right, everything's new, everything's great.
Right. And that's not the way any place has ever developed that's lasted more than a generation. Like every one of those has always failed. So another part of pride, and I think that goes very much into this, is that sort of self-esteem and that idea that we can fix it ourselves. That we can take care, we have all the talent, we have all the resources and ability right within our community. And Jen tackled that topic this week with her clueless filled GIF piece. But in essence,
that article took me like 2 hours to upload. Like all those GIFs, I had to go into like the HTML code and copy paste stuff. She's gonna get some scathing text messages from me after that one.
Yeah, but I love it. I mean, I think, I don't know, I'm just such a huge fan of when you can boil down a complex issue and you can communicate it with memes and, you know, cultural references. Like it makes it so strong, because I mean, it is so true. It's just like in the movie Clueless and dating and all these things. We kind of want to look for an outside thing, and it turns out the right thing was here all along, you know?
Agreed. And you could read some of her, I think she's probably so frustrated with that idea that she was forced to kind of take a lighthearted approach so as not to, not to scream onto the page. Because I've seen that in plenty of communities. Like you've got, I remember years ago, Cleveland did something similar that that a local grocer took this huge risk and put a grocery downtown, and it turned out to be, you know, wildly successful. But you know, all the risk, nobody helped them put in a grocery, and then like 5 years later, Cleveland started approaching Whole Foods to come a couple blocks away, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, how insulting to local people. To go ahead and invite in competition and subsidize them while locals really took the risk and did something. So I imagine that Jen is dealing with that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about these outside sources coming in, like, well, what do they want to be successful? It's their project. So it's the Whole Foods that they're building, or it's the development that they're making, and that's really where it ends to them. But if you look at local talent and local resources and local relationships, yes, they want their thing to be successful, but they also want everything else around their thing to be successful, because this is my city, this is my town, this is my place. And so now there's another layer of involvement and engagement there that ultimately is just going to give a better result, because now you have a community member who not only has a successful business or development, but they're really engaged in the future of the city, and they're part of those conversations, and they're in it on a completely different level.
Right. How insulting to overlook your local business owner, your local developer, these people that are rooted in your town, that came up in your town, that are passionate about your town, and get back to your town and say, like, you can't really do this thing. We need somebody from 20 miles away. They can come in and do this. And, you know, I saw it come up over the weekend. So you know, our colleague Bernice was doing a little trip around New York and Pennsylvania over the weekend and putting up some posts of things she was visiting. And somewhere in Pennsylvania, she posted something, and I saw where somebody else got back on, or somebody, you know, in the comments was like, oh, we so need you to come to our town and fix it. And it's like, no, you, like, Bernice is great. I will, like, of course she is wonderful, but everybody needs a Bernice, and everybody can't have a Bernice. You need to make your own. You've got to create your own. You've got to reach into your community and assist somebody in becoming their own Bernice Riedel or Jen Acosta. How do you build your own developer? Because The out of town ones aren't going to fix it. The local ones are going to be what changes your community.
Yeah, I think so much of that comes from just the perspective that we give to somebody that's local. Because I was saying this the other day on a call that every band is a local band, is just a local band in their hometown. The Beatles they're just a local band in Liverpool, right? But like you have to like leave to gain respect. And I see that as consultants, we see that all the time because we get paid to come in, and oftentimes we just say what there probably was somebody in their staff that was saying those things all along and they weren't listening to them. And it took an outsider to come in and say it and tell them to do it. And it's so many of these things. You do have the talent, you do have the solutions there locally to do it. You just got to respect that local talent and care about them and not just look for the outside. I mean, I think a lot of bands, they got to leave their town to make it because now they're a traveling band, they're an out of town band on tour. So, they get more credit.
Yeah, when I was the Main Street coordinator for Ohio, that is something that to me I saw made all the difference was when a community had local developers that, you can get somebody to come in and do one project, but that is so different than, a couple local people learning how to do it. So Delaware, Ohio, it was, two separate individuals kind of figured out the real estate development process, and they ended up doing something like 40 buildings. That's what transformed their downtown. It was just a couple developers, because once the space was renovated, they never had any problem finding tenants. Like anytime you have a nice space, all of a sudden a tenant would pop up, which was, everybody assumes like, oh, they're like, oh, we have a bunch of rundown crappy spaces. Why aren't all the good businesses pounding down our door? Every time a new office or apartment opened up, somebody was ready. Every time a cool new office opened up, somebody was ready. Like it was those local developers that made all the difference. They created local wealth. They created spaces that were, they could work with the local building department. They could work with local tenants. Like those were the people that were most responsible for the wholesale revitalization of those communities. Just a couple local developers.
And who doesn't want a Paul Rudd? Paul Rudd is your local hero, right? He's your guy. Every town needs a Paul Rudd.
The man never ages.
He doesn't. It's resilient. That's resiliency for you.
Yeah, there you
go. It was such a good piece. And again, I'm glad she sort of took a funny spin on it, because I know that has to be frustrating, but it's just again, it goes back to the very first idea that city leaders keep thinking that something outside can fix it, that it's, somebody outside knows better, that you're not successful unless you're getting that recognition from some national developer or something. And it's backwards. And it is only when local people create business and renovate buildings that you actually start to achieve something that's interesting, where it actually starts to be a positive reflection on your community and a demonstration of your own identity. And that's like, stop looking outside to solve your problems. That's such a sign of low self-esteem when you can and must fix them internally.
Yeah, and there's an element here too where she mentioned telling your story and mapping your assets. And I think there's a level where we just don't know our communities well enough and the kinds of resources and the people and the talent that we have. And so it's easier in a certain way to just type it into Google or talk to so-and-so who talked to this developer who is 3 states away or whatever it is, because that's just easier. Whereas if you really have to get into your community, you have to know that who can fill what gaps and who can solve what problems. And that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes, maybe rekindling bridges that were burned decades ago to say, hey, how can we work together again, because I see you really affecting this area, and that's exactly what we need. And so you really have, the first step is to dig into your community and say, what are the problems and the issues that we have? And then 2, well, what do we have to work with? Who's the people that we have to work with? Who can fill these gaps? And that takes a lot of self-reflection and intentional work before the actual work gets done.
So true. Um, yeah, it hits the nail on the head because right, and if you went through the process and thought, okay, you tried to bring in somebody from outside, what did you have to spend? How much did you entice them? Like what all went into it? And that, it's probably a fair amount of money that you were spending to try to lure somebody in from outside. Like, had you just taken that same money, had you taken that same approach and took it, thought about it a little bit different, it's like, hey, we've got this pot of money that we're going to incentivize, that we're going to use, we're going to market, etc. What if we took somebody local that already had a little know-how, that already had a little interest, and then maybe um, got them a little bit of training, maybe help buy down the purchase price of a building, maybe like any number of things that could have been done. And that person then would have successfully renovated one building and would be ready for their next and their next and their next. Like that's how you do economic development, is teach people how to do these things for themselves and stop paying people to come in from outside, because you're just paying them to come and take your money.
And can you imagine the effect of on the relationship between a city or a place and its people if they were very vocal about that? Like, hey, typically we have $150,000 that we funnel to outside, developers, whatever it is. We're instead going to take that money and we're going to funnel it into you.
Yeah.
Your businesses, your nonprofits, here's the application process. Like what an amazing relationship building action that would
Right.
be. Like finally, here's the one thing that people can point to that says, yes, they do care about us. Like they're
Right.
taking the money away from people who are not us and giving it to us because they want us to be successful. That's a great signal that says we're all on the same team. We're all trying to win this thing together. So here you go, us.
Right. What a novel idea is, like, the city is taking taxpayer money and investing it back into taxpayers.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
not hardly what goes on. Instead of, the city is taking taxpayer money, using it to entice somebody that's not from our community to come into our community to build something that they're going to profit on and then leave our community. Like that's how successful big business and economic development has become, because they have convinced us that that is a smart bargain. And
Yeah.
the first cities that finally turn their back and say, like, no, 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 like, you're out of your mind, we're going to invest every dollar back into people that live within this town, is going to run, like, is going to blow up.
Right. Yeah, and you're that approach, that really us-centered approach, um it's I just lost the train of thought. Um it's it's considerably different than this outside investing approach, because you're increasing value of the things that you already have and you're making them more important and better and we resilient, using the buzzword, more resilient. You're increasing the value of what you have, which is always going to be a great investment, as opposed to taking all of these outside influences. Like, you think that they're just additive. Well, now we have this and now we have this and we have these things that we didn't have before. But like, we go back to Joe's piece and Jen's piece, like that's never the case. You're never just getting something out of the deal. Something else is being taken away, whether that's funneling of money outside of the local economy, or you're losing character. There's always some kind of sacrifice to be made. But if you're taking that money and you're investing it back in yourself, I mean, that is such a huge power move in the life of a place.
Yeah, absolutely. It is agreed. Like, I didn't realize when we jumped onto this that all three topics were really just the
Yeah.
same, of like, rely local, put your faith back in your people.
In a
Um,
meaningful way, like more
right,
than just, and I wanted to say this with Ryan's piece, is like more than just the hashtag, shop local,
right,
the on small business Saturday, or that one day a week or one day a year where people are really focused on small businesses. But give them money, help them buy property, help them out in some kind of meaningful capacity, rather than just a hashtag on one random day a year.
right, right. Like, seriously invest in them, trust in them, build their trust. Like, you know, you kind of have to take some risks sometimes with, like, you know, tell your kids you can go do it. Like, what if you as a municipality said, we are going to trust you, actually use your taxpayer money to put back into you,
Yeah.
and build that real pride and stop seeking outsiders. Like, it's not a huge shift at all. It's a pretty straightforward and pragmatic shift, yet it's one that desperately needs to happen. And I think that as communities start to do that, to think like, let's invest in ourselves and build our own pride, they're gonna I can't wait for more of it to catch on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think that wraps us up for today.
Okay, people, if you like this podcast, you're in luck, because there's many more podcasts. You can go to iTunes or Spotify and listen to all our past episodes. We've got weekly episodes rolling out. It's either us yammering at each other about various place topics, or we invite people like Katie Yellow and Megan Haza from Flint on, experts outside of our circle, because we love listening to them. So check us out on iTunes and Spotify. Follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Proud Places. Check us out. We've got content going up every single day. Big meaty pieces of content going up on the website every single week, where you can connect with all 15 of our amazing contributors. So follow us on social media, follow us on our podcast, and head over to our website, www.proudplaces.com.
Thanks. What? Huh? Thanks, Phil. And I will.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. See you next week.
See ya.